When HOA Karen tried to sink my daughter's boat, she had no idea she was about to mess with someone who owned the entire lake authority. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that devastating Saturday morning when I found my 16-year-old daughter, Emma, sobbing on our dock, her hands covered in fiberglass splinters, and her dreams literally taking on water. Dad, someone put holes in Serenity's hull. Emma choked out between tears, gesturing toward her small sailboat that she'd spent 2 years saving for with her part-time job at the local marina. The boat was listing dangerously to one side, the pristine white fiberglass marred by 3 deliberate puncture wounds just above the waterline. This wasn't storm damage or natural wear. These were clean, methodical holes made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. My blood ran cold as I knelt beside the boat, running my fingers along the damage. Each hole was perfectly sized, drilled with precision to cause maximum flooding without being immediately obvious. This was sabotage, plain and simple. But who would target a teenage girl's boat? Who would be cruel enough to destroy something that represented years of dreams and hard work? "There's a note," Emma whispered, pulling a soggy piece of paper from the cockpit. The handwriting was aggressive, all capital letters in blue ink. UNA, UTHORIZED, WATERCRAF, TV, IOLATIAELNS, WILLLN, OTB, DEEALI, LASEE, REMOVE, THISA, YESOREORF, ACEES, CALAT, INGCONSA, QEENCE, LAKESIDEEESTATES, EAAALA, CEELEI, EEELMITTE. I felt my hands trembling as the pieces clicked together. Margaret Patterson, or Karen, as the neighborhood kids had dubbed her, the self-appointed queen of our Lakeside Estates HOA. For months, she'd been circling our property like a vulture, looking for any excuse to flex her perceived authority. She'd already hit us with bogus fines for improperly maintained lawn edges and non-regulation mailbox height, but this was crossing a line I never imagined anyone would cross. "Emma, listen to me carefully," I said, wrapping my arm around my daughter's shaking shoulders. "This isn't your fault, and this isn't over. Some people think they can bully others just because they have a little bit of power, but they have no idea who they're really dealing with." Emma looked up at me with those same determined eyes her mother had, God rest her soul. "But Dad, what can we do?" "Mrs. Patterson is the HOA president. Everyone's afraid of her. The Johnsons moved away last year because she made their lives hell over their fence height. The Martinez family can't even park their work truck in their own driveway anymore because of her stupid rules." She was right, and that's what made this so much worse. Karen Patterson had systematically terrorized our neighborhood for 3 years, hiding behind her HOA title like it was some kind of divine authority. She'd turned what should have been a peaceful lakeside community into her personal kingdom, where families lived in fear of her next arbitrary rule or vindictive fine. But here's what Karen didn't know, what nobody in the neighborhood knew: I wasn't just another helpless homeowner she could push around. For the past 15 years, through a carefully maintained private trust, I'd been the majority owner of the Tri-County Lake Authority, the governing body that actually controlled this entire lake system. Every boat permit, every dock license, every water usage regulation, it all ultimately flowed through an organization I controlled. I'd kept this secret deliberately. After my wife died 5 years ago, Emma and I had moved here seeking peace and anonymity. I'd made my fortune in water rights and municipal planning, but I wanted to be just another dad in a quiet neighborhood, not the guy everyone came to with their problems and requests. The trust was set up so that my identity remained completely hidden from public records. Even the Lake Authority board members only knew me as the beneficial owner through my legal representative. But as I watched my daughter's dreams literally sinking into the lake, I realized my desire for privacy had created a monster. Karen Patterson had been operating under the delusion that she was the highest authority around here, and in my absence, she turned into a neighborhood tyrant. "Dad, she left another note," Emma said, pulling out her phone to show me a text message that had come in just minutes earlier. "She says, if we don't remove the boat completely by tomorrow, she's calling the county to have it declared abandoned property and forcibly removed." I felt something cold settle in my chest as I read Karen's message. The arrogance was breathtaking. She was threatening to use county resources that ultimately answered to my lake authority to steal my daughter's boat. She was so drunk on her tiny bit of HOA power that she genuinely believed she could commandeer actual government agencies to do her bidding. "Emma, I want you to do something for me," I said, helping her to her feet. "I want you to text Mrs. Patterson back and tell her that we'll be attending the next HOA meeting to discuss this matter formally. Tell her we're prepared to fight this through proper channels." Emma looked confused. "But Dad, what's the point?" "She controls the HOA board. They always side with her. The Hendersons tried to fight her over the pool regulations last year, and she buried them in legal fees until they gave up." I smiled for the first time that morning, though there was nothing warm about it. "Trust me, sweetheart. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to let them think they're winning, right up until the moment their entire world falls apart around them." As we walked back toward the house, I was already formulating my plan. Karen Patterson wanted to play power games? She wanted to use authority she didn't actually possess to destroy a teenage girl's dreams? Fine. But she was about to learn the hard way what real authority looked like and why you should never, ever mess with someone's child unless you're absolutely certain you know who you're dealing with. The war was just beginning, and Karen had no idea she'd already lost. What Karen Patterson didn't understand was that her reign of terror over lakeside estates had been possible only because I'd allowed it. For 15 years, I'd built the Tri-County Lake Authority from a struggling municipal department into the most powerful water management organization in 3 counties. Every lake, every waterway, every dock permitted all flowed through systems I'd designed and controlled through the Meridian Environmental Trust. The irony was suffocating. Karen strutted around our neighborhood like she owned the place, when in reality, I literally owned the water her precious lakefront properties depended on. I controlled the flood management systems, the water quality standards, the boat registration requirements, even the fish stocking programs. The Lake Authority generated over $12 million annually in permits, fees, and environmental management contracts, and every decision ultimately came back to me. I'd established the trust after my first major water rights acquisition deal went public and turned me into what the local papers called the Lake King. Suddenly, everyone wanted something permits expedited, regulations bent, special exceptions granted. I'd moved here for peace after Sarah died, wanting Emma to grow up somewhere normal, away from the constant pressure of being the water authority owner's daughter. The trust allowed me to maintain control while living anonymously, just another single dad in a quiet neighborhood. But my anonymity had created a power vacuum that Karen had gleefully filled with her petty tyranny. Over the next 3 days, I watched her escalation with growing fury. She'd started a neighborhood email chain about problem families that violated community standards. She'd posted passive-aggressive signs around the common areas about respect for shared resources. Most sickeningly, she'd begun targeting other families who dared to show Emma any support. When the Martinez family offered to help Emma repair her boat, Karen slapped them with a $500 fine for unauthorized commercial vehicle storage, because their work truck had been parked in their own driveway for more than 2 consecutive nights. When elderly Mrs. Chen mentioned that Karen's behavior seemed a bit harsh, Karen initiated a formal complaint process against Mrs. Chen's non-conforming garden gnome collection. The breaking point came Tuesday evening when Karen called me directly. "Mr. Stevens," her voice dripped with false sweetness through the phone, "I think it's time we had an adult conversation about your daughter's little problem." "What problem would that be, Margaret?" I kept my voice carefully neutral, though every fiber of my being wanted to unleash 15 years of accumulated authority on her in that moment. "Well, the boat situation, obviously. But it's bigger than that now. Emma has been difficult about accepting community standards. She's been encouraging other residents to question legitimate HOA authority. Yesterday, I caught her distributing some kind of petition about fair treatments and due process. We simply can't have children undermining the proper order of things." I felt my jaw clench. Emma hadn't told me about any petition, but knowing my daughter, she was probably trying to organize some kind of community response to Karen's bullying. The fact that this terrified Karen enough to call me directly told me everything I needed to know about how fragile her power really was. "Margaret, Emma is 16 years old. She's allowed to have opinions about how she's being treated, not when those opinions disrupt community harmony," Karen snapped, her mask of politeness finally slipping. "Let me be very clear, Mr. Stevens. I've been patient with your family because you're new here and obviously don't understand how things work. But that patience has limits. If Emma continues to agitate against proper authority, I'll be forced to take more serious measures. Such as calling the county about that illegal boat mooring. Such as reviewing your property for every possible code violation. Such as recommending to the board that your family might be happier in a different neighborhood altogether." Her voice had turned cold, calculating. "I've helped several problem families reach that conclusion over the years. The Martinez family is already looking at houses across town. It would be a shame if you had to uproot Emma right before her senior year, but sometimes maintaining community standards requires difficult decisions." I closed my eyes and counted to 10, reminding myself that the most satisfying victories came from patience, not impulse. "I appreciate your clarity, Margaret. Emma and I will be attending Thursday's HOA meeting to address these concerns through proper channels." Karen's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Oh, Mr. Stevens. You really don't understand what you're walking into, do you? I've been managing this community for 4 years. I know every regulation, every procedure, every legal precedent. I have complete board support and documented violations from your property going back months. Your little boat problem is just the beginning. We'll see you Thursday, Margaret." "Yes," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Yes, you will." After hanging up, I sat in my home office for a long time, staring at the Lake Authority organizational chart mounted discreetly behind my desk. 43 employees, 6 department heads, 3 county liaisons, and a 12-member advisory board, all ultimately answerable to the mysterious beneficial owner they'd never met. Tomorrow, I would make 3 phone calls. First, to my legal representative to begin preparing the documentation that would end Karen Patterson's reign of terror permanently. Second, to the Lake Authority's Enforcement Division to begin a comprehensive review of all water access permits in the Lakeside Estates subdivision. And third, to the County Planning Office to request a full audit of HOA compliance with municipal water usage regulations. By Thursday's meeting, I would have enough legal ammunition to destroy not just Karen's authority, but her reputation, her standing in the community, and possibly her property value. She wanted to play games with government oversight? She was about to discover what real government oversight looked like. But first, I had to let her think she was winning. The best traps were the ones where the victim walked in voluntarily, convinced they were about to claim their greatest victory. Karen Patterson had spent 4 years terrorizing families who couldn't fight back. Thursday night, she would finally face someone who could not only fight back, but who had been holding back a dam's worth of authority, just waiting for the right moment to let it all come crashing down on someone who truly deserved it. The meeting was 2 days away, and Karen had no idea she was about to learn the difference between borrowed authority and the real thing. The next 48 hours became a masterclass in strategic patience. While Karen Patterson prepared what she undoubtedly believed would be my family's public execution, I was orchestrating something far more devastating, her complete and total destruction, using the very systems she thought she understood. Wednesday morning, I made my first call to Patricia Wong, the attorney who'd managed my trust affairs for over a decade. Patricia was one of only 3 people who knew my true identity as the Lake Authority's beneficial owner, and she'd helped me navigate countless municipal water disputes without ever revealing my involvement. Richard, Patricia's voice was crisp and professional, as always. I assume this isn't a social call. What's the situation? I explained Karen's harassment campaign, the boat sabotage, and her escalating threats against my daughter and other neighborhood families. As I spoke, I could hear Patricia typing rapidly. She always took meticulous notes during our calls. So you want to reveal your identity to resolve a neighborhood dispute? Patricia asked when I finished. Richard, are you sure about this? Once you break your anonymity, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Every future decision you make regarding lake management will be scrutinized through the lens of personal relationships. Patricia, this woman, drilled holes in my 16-year-old daughter's boat and is threatening to have it declared abandoned property. She's systematically terrorizing families who can't fight back, and she's doing it by falsely claiming authority she doesn't possess. This isn't just about my family anymore. It's about stopping a bully who's been operating unchecked because people like me have stayed silent. There was a pause before Patricia spoke again, and when she did, her voice carried a hint of satisfaction. In that case, let's make sure we do this properly. I'll need documentation of all her claims about county enforcement, copies of any written threats, and a full accounting of her HOA's compliance with Lake Authority regulations. If she wants to play government oversight games, we'll show her what actual oversight looks like. My second call went to Marcus Chen, the Lake Authority's chief of enforcement, no relation to Mrs. Chen with the garden gnomes, though the coincidence had always amused me. Marcus had been with the authority for 8 years and had never questioned why certain directives came down through Patricia rather than directly from the board. Marcus, I need a comprehensive audit of all water access permits for the Lakeside Estate subdivision, effective immediately, I said, using the neutral tone I always employed when issuing directives through Patricia. Any particular focus areas? Marcus asked. I could hear papers rustling in the background. He was already pulling files. Everything: dock permits, boat registrations, water usage compliance, shoreline modification approvals. I want to know if every single property is in complete compliance with all Lake Authority regulations. And, Marcus, I want this completed by tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening? That's a very aggressive timeline for a full subdivision audit. I understand. Please prioritize this request and assign whatever resources are necessary. Oh, and Marcus, if you find any violations, I want them documented with full legal remediation requirements. No warnings, no grace periods. By the book enforcement only. The third call was to Janet Rodriguez at the County Planning Office. Janet and I had worked together on numerous interagency water management projects, though she also didn't know about my Lake Authority ownership. Janet, I need a favor, I said, adopting the casual tone of one bureaucrat asking another for help. I'm dealing with an HOA situation where someone is claiming they can compel county enforcement actions for water-related violations. Can you send me the actual protocols for HOA requests to county services? Janet laughed. Oh, Richard, you've got one of those HOA dictators, don't you? I see this all the time. They read one municipal code handbook and suddenly think they're deputy county commissioners. What specifically are they claiming they can do? They're threatening to have a legally owned boat declared abandoned property and forcibly removed using county resources. The trap was set, and Karen Patterson was about to walk straight into it. The Lakeside Estates Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Every folding chair was occupied, with residents standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. Karen had orchestrated this perfectly. She'd turned what should have been a routine HOA meeting into a public tribunal, complete with an audience primed to witness the Stevens family's humiliation. Karen sat at the head table like a queen holding court, flanked by her 3 puppet board members who nodded at her every word. She'd dressed for the occasion in a severe black blazer that screamed authority, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun that made her look like she was auditioning for a role as a federal prosecutor. The moment Emma and I walked in, her eyes locked onto us with undisguised satisfaction. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen announced, standing as the clock struck 7, tonight we address a situation that threatens the very foundation of our community standards. The Stevens family has repeatedly violated HOA regulations, ignored proper authority, and encouraged others to disrespect the systems that keep our neighborhood functioning. She gestured dramatically toward a whiteboard covered with photos of our property, our allegedly improperly maintained lawn edges, our non-regulation mailbox, and of course, Emma's boat before the sabotage. These violations represent a pattern of deliberate disregard for community harmony. But tonight, we also address something more serious: the distribution of inflammatory materials designed to undermine legitimate HOA governance. Emma squeezed my hand as Karen produced copies of her petition about fair treatment. I could feel my daughter's tension, but I also felt her courage. She'd spent the week fighting the only way she knew how, and even facing this orchestrated humiliation, she wasn't backing down. The board has reviewed all documentation, Karen continued, her voice rising with theatrical authority, and we've determined this family's pattern of non-compliance has escalated beyond what can be addressed through normal channels. Therefore, I've taken the liberty of contacting county enforcement services regarding the illegal boat mooring and several other municipal code violations on the Stevens property. A murmur went through the crowd. This was exactly what I'd been waiting for: Karen's public claim that she could compel county enforcement actions. She was digging her own grave with every word. Furthermore, Karen said, clearly savoring her moment of supreme authority, I've been in contact with the Lake Authority regarding unauthorized water access violations. The Stevens family seems to believe they can ignore proper permitting procedures, but they're about to learn that some authorities can't be bullied or manipulated. The Lake Authority. She just claimed to be working with an organization I owned. The audacity was breathtaking, but it was also the final piece I needed for her complete destruction. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. This was it. 15 years of carefully maintained anonymity was about to end, but it was worth it to protect my daughter and stop a tyrant who'd terrorized too many families for too long. Margaret, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room, before you continue, I think there are a few things this community needs to know about the authorities you're claiming to represent. Karen's eyes narrowed. Mr. Stevens, you'll have an opportunity to respond to these charges after. Actually, Margaret, I think I'll respond right now, I interrupted, pulling out the folder Patricia had prepared. You see, you've made some very interesting claims tonight about county enforcement and Lake Authority cooperation. I think everyone here would benefit from understanding exactly how those systems actually work. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, Janet Rodriguez's official county protocol summary. Let's start with your claim about county enforcement. According to the County Planning Office, HOAs have zero authority to compel county property seizures. Zero. When citizens make complaints to county services, those complaints are reviewed through normal channels, and frankly, county departments don't have time to chase down every neighborhood feud. Karen's face was starting to flush, but she maintained her composure. Mr. Stevens, I don't know what amateur legal research you've been doing, but… Oh, this isn't amateur research, Margaret, I said, pulling out the second document. This is the official county statute regarding false authority claims. It turns out that threatening government enforcement actions you can't actually initiate could be considered intimidation through false authority claims. The DEA's office is very interested in cases like this. Now Karen was looking genuinely worried, but she pressed on. That's completely irrelevant to the Lake Authority violations. I've been working directly with their enforcement division, and they've assured me that… Margaret, I said quietly, pulling out the third document, I need to stop you right there. Because what you've just said is either a deliberate lie or a catastrophic misunderstanding of who you're actually dealing with. The room had gone completely silent. Even the kids who'd been fidgeting in the back had stopped moving. Emma was staring at me with growing realization, and I could see other residents leaning forward, sensing that something massive was about to happen. I held up Marcus Chen's comprehensive audit report. You see, Margaret, the Lake Authority did complete a full review of this subdivision. In fact, they completed the most thorough audit in the organization's history. And the results are illuminating. Karen's face had gone pale, but she tried one last desperate bluff. I don't know what you think you're proving here, Mr. Stevens, but the Lake Authority takes HOA recommendations very seriously, and when I spoke with their office… Margaret, I said, my voice cutting through her panic like a blade, you never spoke with the Lake Authority office. Because if you had, they would have told you something that's about to change everything you think you know about this situation. I pulled out the final document, the trust disclosure papers that Patricia had prepared, officially revealing my identity as the beneficial owner of the Tri-County Lake Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, addressing the entire room now for the past 15 years, through the Meridian Environmental Trust, I have been the majority owner and controlling authority of the Tri-County Lake Authority. Every boat permit in this county, every dock license, every water usage, regulation, it all ultimately flows through an organization I control. The silence was deafening. I could see jaws dropping throughout the room, residents turning to whisper to each other in shock. Karen had gone completely white, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Margaret, when you threatened to use Lake Authority enforcement against my family, you were threatening to use my own organization against me. When you claimed to have contacted them about violations, you were lying about communications with an agency I own. And when you drilled holes in my daughter's boat, you committed vandalism against the property of someone who controls every aspect of water access in this entire county. Karen finally found her voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. That's impossible. You're just a regular homeowner. You can't. You don't. I moved here 5 years ago because I wanted my daughter to grow up somewhere normal, away from the pressure of being the Lake Authority owner's daughter, I continued, my voice growing stronger with every word. I maintained my anonymity because I wanted to be just another single dad in a quiet neighborhood. But my desire for privacy created a power vacuum that you filled with petty tyranny and systematic bullying. I held up Marcus's audit report again. Margaret, would you like to know what the Lake Authority's comprehensive audit of this subdivision discovered? It found that 87% of properties in lakeside estates have water access permit violations, including yours. Karen's face went from white to green. What? What kind of violations? Oh, where do I begin? I said, flipping through the pages with deliberate slowness. Unauthorized dock modifications, non-compliant boat lift installations, unpermitted shoreline alterations, illegal gray water discharge systems. Your property alone has 14 separate violations. Margaret. 14. The crowd was murmuring now, some residents pulling out their phones to start recording. This was exactly the kind of dramatic reversal that would be shared throughout the community for years to come. But here's my favorite part, I continued, finding the specific page I was looking for. Your private dock, the one you've been so proud of, the one you used to demonstrate your superiority to other residents? It was built 6 feet beyond your legally permitted water access zone. According to Lake Authority regulations, it constitutes an illegal encroachment on public waterway space. Karen was gripping the edge of the table now, her knuckles white. You can't. There has to be some mistake. No mistake, Margaret. And unlike your imaginary county enforcement powers, I actually can compel immediate remediation. Your dock will be removed within 30 days at your expense, or the Lake Authority will remove it and bill you for the cost. Your boat permits are suspended pending a full compliance review. And your water access privileges are revoked until every single violation is corrected. I turned to address the rest of the room. As for the other residents, don't worry. The Lake Authority believes in reasonable compliance timelines and working with property owners to resolve issues. Most of these violations can be corrected with simple permit applications and minor modifications. We'll be sending out detailed remediation plans next week, along with contact information for our community liaison program. Then I turned back to Karen, who was now visibly shaking. But Margaret, your situation is different. Because you didn't just have permit violations, you committed vandalism, made false authority claims, and systematically harassed multiple families while pretending to represent law enforcement agencies. The DAE's office will be receiving a full report tomorrow morning. Karen tried one final desperate stand. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I have board support. This community elected me to maintain order. Actually, Margaret, said a voice from the back of the room. No, we didn't. Everyone turned to see Tom Martinez standing up, holding a folder of his own. Margaret, you weren't elected to anything. When the previous HOA president moved away 3 years ago, you just took over. You declared yourself interim president and kept extending your own term. We've been checking the HOA bylaws, and according to the original governing documents, your authority expired 2 years ago. Other residents were standing now, voices joining in. She fined us $300 for parking violations that don't exist in our HOA charter. She made us remove a playground because she said it violated noise ordinances, but there are no noise ordinances in our agreement. She threatened to foreclose on our house over a mailbox color. The room erupted in years of suppressed anger and frustration. Karen looked around wildly as her entire foundation of power crumbled in real time. She wasn't just losing her authority, she was discovering that most of her authority had been imaginary all along. This meeting is over, she announced desperately, gathering her papers with shaking hands. I won't sit here and listen to this. This conspiracy. Actually, Margaret, I said quietly, you're right. This meeting is over. But your problems are just beginning. As she rushed toward the exit, I called after her. Oh, and Margaret? When you get home tonight, you might want to check your mailbox. Patricia Wong, from the Lake Authority's legal department, left you some very important documents this afternoon. Consider them your 30-day notice for dock removal and your official notification of permit revocation. The door slammed behind her, and the room exploded in applause and cheers. Emma threw her arms around me, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of vindication and relief. Dad, she whispered, you didn't just protect me. You protected everyone. Tom Martinez made his way over to us, grinning broadly. "Mr. Stevens, or should I say, Mr. Lake Authority, I don't know how to thank you. That woman has made our lives hell for 3 years." "Just Richard is fine," I said, shaking his hand. "And you don't need to thank me. I should have acted sooner. I let my desire for privacy enable a bully, and that's on me." Mrs. Chen approached next, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "So the garden gnome violations were from someone who didn't even have real authority?" "Mrs. Chen," I laughed, "your garden gnomes are welcome to stay exactly where they are. In fact, the Lake Authority might be interested in sponsoring a community garden project. We believe in enhancing neighborhood character, not suppressing it." Over the next hour, as residents shared their Karen Patterson horror stories and began planning a legitimate HOA restructure, I realized something profound had happened here. This wasn't just about stopping one bully, it was about a community rediscovering its own power and voice. Emma had started this fight with her petition about fair treatment and due process. She'd understood something I'd forgotten in my years of hiding behind anonymity. Sometimes protecting what matters most requires standing up publicly, even when it's uncomfortable. 3 weeks later, Karen Patterson's dock was gone. Her permits were still suspended, and she'd quietly put her house on the market. The DA's office decided not to press charges in exchange for her resignation from all HOA activities and a formal apology letter to every family she'd harassed. Emma's boat, fully repaired and better than ever, sat proudly at our dock with a brand new Lake Authority compliance sticker. But more importantly, our neighborhood had transformed from a place where families lived in fear into a genuine community where people looked out for each other. The moral of this story isn't just about karma catching up to bullies, though that's certainly satisfying. It's about the responsibility that comes with power, the responsibility to use it when good people are being hurt, even when staying quiet would be easier. I'd spent 5 years trying to be invisible, thinking I was protecting my daughter from the complications of my success. But real protection meant being willing to step into the light when darkness threatened the people I cared about. If you've ever dealt with a neighborhood tyrant, a workplace bully, or anyone who uses their small piece of authority to make others miserable, remember this: they're usually not as powerful as they pretend to be, and there's almost always someone with the real authority to stop them. Sometimes you just need to be brave enough to find out who that someone is. And if you're that someone, if you have power you haven't been using because it's easier to stay quiet, remember my daughter Emma, saving her money for 2 years to buy a little sailboat, only to find it sabotaged by someone who thought destroying dreams was just another way to prove their authority. Sometimes the most important thing you can do with power is use it to protect someone else's dreams. Hit that subscribe button if you believe that standing up to bullies is always worth it, and let me know in the comments about your own experiences dealing with people who mistake authority for tyranny. Trust me, you're not alone in this fight.